So, yeah, I think we should probably go live. Sue's
We
probably
are
waiting
live.
on.
So,
Oh, we
welcome
already
everyone to the fourth Storm game. I'm sorry, to the fourth Growth with Tacos episode. We have myself, Pierce Walker, Jason Alaya, and Devin Overton join us today. So, it's been a long week. Before we actually do anything, I want to get this off the bat. I have a correction to make. Last week, we mentioned that Breonna Taylor was being or that the police were serving a warrant for a person that was not at that address and already in custody, and that is wrong. It turns out that the warrant was indeed for her address and not for, some imaginary person already in custody or at a different address. So that is something we were wrong about, and I felt it important to make that correction right off the bat. So that being said, again, welcome everybody. How you guys been doing? It's been a week. There's a whole lot of things that have happened in the news.
Where do we want to start?
What
train do we want to go with first?
What we were talking about just before we went live is that I was talking about how too many people on a podcast, what I was going to say, will lead to basically the debate last night in terms of the tenor and the cross-talking and so on and so forth. And so obviously, I mean, the debate is what I've been thinking about, of course, and the implications from it. I know you guys were talking about that a bit today in terms of the election and the kind of like pieces being moved towards it, not even in terms of expectations set up, right? Like what Trump's doing, all that stuff. I mean, that's what I'm thinking about right now. But
yeah, the debate last night was a bit of a shit show. The whole time I'm watching, I'm thinking, like, why don't you just cut off their mic? Because they're both interrupting each other. Trump is interrupting Biden more, but they're both interrupting each other. I'm just thinking, this would be so much easier if just, boom, flip switch, mic cut, And then I realized...
They did it to Andrew Yang enough, so...
Yeah, right?
I feel like maybe...
but efficient, they're going to have certain things that are agreed to, such as like, I'll be under this amount of lighting, like all sorts of different, mostly minute things the campaign is going to demand. And of course, one of the not minute things would be, yeah, you can't cut our mic. And then not to mention, think if the mic actually was cut, then it's going to be like, you're censoring me. It would have been problematic. So you have basically a person that insulted circuses, because whatever it was worse than a circus.
Yeah, because then you get into the whole thing of like, well, Biden's mic was cut for a bit less of time than Trump's was, and therefore Chris Wallace is biased or whatever.
Ultimately, we rely on the civil decency of the participants.
You rely on civil decency with Donald Trump.
And exactly, that was not found. And Biden is an individual that is, I doubt he's used to being disrespected, quite frankly. I think not too many people challenge him usually in his life. So he didn't know how to handle it. And we had the shouting match that it was. The rest of the entire world watched that debate. And the only people that nobody won. Nobody won. The American people lost. That's how that debate went, in my opinion. I got my tacos on the stove. I'm going to put them in tortillas and join to chow down with you, Jason. I'll be right back.
Yeah, Jason, you have yours right now?
My connection keeps going in and out. I'm sorry, guys.
Yours is?
Yeah, I think it's my connection that keeps going in and out. So.
Mine's not amazing either, so I don't know. I can't tell. You have tacos with you right now, is that right?
Yes, I do have tacos with me right now.
So, what do I got going on here? Oh no, you're frozen for me. You were frozen exactly where you had them, and then by the time you stopped being frozen, the tacos were gone. So you're gonna have to do that again.
Okay.
Okay. Did you make these?
No.
The fact that it's yeah. If you made them, it would have been like.
I had been too sick to make them, so. I had to ship in from Iowa.
I mean, is that the cause? I mean, I guess we're telling this out of context. Staph infections, is that how that's caused?
From tacos, no. Staph infection is caused from there being usually one gross motherfucker who uses the same bathroom as everyone else.
Yeah, okay.
We lived with a bunch of gross motherfuckers. So
There's a lot of people.
yeah. What's up, Sue? Sue's in the room. Say hi, Devin.
Hello. Oh, I see it. You know, I'm a, what is it called? Mod? Admin. Hold on. I asked you about your tacos. Oh, yeah. No, let's redirect here. You're telling me you got staph, so you know it's staph infection, like that was diagnosed, you got the whole thing. But you're eating food now.
What I had is called endocarditis.
Which is a
It's
staph.
an infection of the fluid around the heart. So the infection in the fluid around the heart was caused by a staph infection that I picked up from somewhere that probably lay dormant long enough in my system to reach my heart and infect it.
Sorry to interrupt your taco pizza eating, Sue. We're talking about
We are not
bacteria. Pierce here. We're talking about.
Yeah.
We're just talking about this came up.
All right. So, pro tip for everybody
Um,
that cooks tacos: you actually want to put the cheese on the tortilla first, because then the hot meat on top is going to go above it and melt the cheese a lot better than if the cheese was on top. So, boom.
Is that
It's not the most aesthetic. Everybody likes to look at the cheese on top, but the cheese melts better below. There you go. Life hack.
Two meats on your taco?
Unless
Sorry?
you get it from a taco truck and they just put the cheese on top and melt it on the grill and then scoop it off into the cooked tortilla. So.
Well, unfortunately, I do not live anywhere near the Mexican border these days. And accordingly, the quality of local food and frequency of taco trucks declines accordingly.
You go to the Canadian border and get like Canadian tacos, you know.
Poutine is what they call it, sir. Poutine. I did not even know what poutine was until I came to New York. For anyone else, I guess, that doesn't know what poutine is, it's basically
delicious. That's what poutine is.
yeah, it's French fries in gravy with cheese. That's what poutine is.
Cheese.
And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty good.
Jason brought up an important point. It's cheese curds.
Thank you, Sue. Yes, cheese curds.
Fried.
Cheese curds and poutine.
But Pierce, what I asked was, is that two kinds of meat on each taco? What is that?
Nope, it is not. That being said, it is a little different than normal. So I cook these just a different way than normal. I added what we have called tiger sauce out here. So you've heard of like buffalo sauce, right? So tiger sauce is like buffalo sauce, probably a bit more zany, if you will. And it's something that you just find out here. So instead of normal taco seasoning, I got tiger sauce. And I'm about to find out how it is.
That's what Charlie Sheen made when he came.
When he like it was a.
No one remembers Charlie Sheen.
Oh my goodness, Sue! I owe you a recipe. All right, immediately after this show, go to my Twitter. I will have the pork recipe for you. I have it written down. I will take photos of it and I will post it to Twitter just for you.
You're not talking about. You're not talking about adobada, are you?
No.
Pineapple pork. Is it like literally pineapple?
Oh, yeah, you missed it. So we were talking about just sweet pork as opposed to like spicy pork. And I mentioned how there's this mango like pork recipe that I discovered when I was a kid. And I cook it like once a year or something, not like that common. But it's pretty good and everybody enjoys it. So we mentioned it on the show and Sue asked for the recipe. So
I need to try mango at some point. There's like multiple things in my swirling around my brain still from like when I was a kid that I'm convinced I hate, and mango is one of those things. I'm sure it's a perfectly fine fruit. I'm sure it accents the pork in your recipe just fine, but like I am actively repulsed for some reason by mango, like when you say it. But I'm trying to sneak in another guy.
I don't know how you don't like mango, dude.
Well, I think I was like
This is the problem.
on it, and then there was one point where I had a sushi roll that had mango in it, and I assumed again I would be neutral on it, but it was actively offensive to me. Like I don't know how they did it. Maybe the mango wasn't even the part that was awful. Something about that roll.
It was called a monkey love roll. I know those rolls. They're
Do
disgusting.
you like sushi?
Oh God, yeah.
Okay.
He's not a savage, but like there is some sushi rolls that are made horribly wrong. And the monkey love roll, which is the only one I know of with mango in it, is disgusting.
I can't think of a time where I ate something and it's not even like, oh yeah, I don't really like that very much. My body just rejected it actively.
Yeah.
Sure.
It was not good. But yeah, sushi is the best. Like, I'm more of a nigiri guy myself.
Oh, we have a special guest joining us. Here, you want to do your announcing?
We only need to now. Hold on. Go ahead.
All right. And joining us today also, indeed, as Jason mentioned, our special guest. He runs the podcast show Let's Fix America. We have Miak Tiagi, not to be confused with the other Miak on the show. Miak, welcome, man.
Hey, thanks.
What's
Thanks,
up,
Pierce.
bro?
Hey, what's up, guys?
We have tacos. I told you. They make you feel
Dude,
better.
I wish I had tacos right now. I'm gonna eat after this though.
I would say Uber Eats, but they're like, horrible people who like steal money from their drivers and, won't let them like, unionize or have benefits, etc. So I just suggest finding a local taco shop that delivers.
Yeah, there's actually there's one by me. I didn't have time to order tacos. I should have though.
You're in San Diego though, so right?
Yeah,
That's why. That's why there's a local taco shop nearby.
exactly.
Well, it's been my observation that people are more willing to hear and listen to new things if they have a full stomach,
Yeah.
People,
For sure.
Yeah. So, growth with tacos. Here we are. Speaking of new things, so we have a request from someone just before the show started to talk about Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, are any of you guys up to speed on that?
Ugh. Do I have to be?
Not really.
Okay. So I guess like 101 backdrop. Actually, real quick, Sue, the name of the podcast is Let's Fix America, that our guest Mayank is from.
It's
So
absolutely fantastic. The one that they just did with Reverend Wendy Williams was phenomenal and nothing but love and just amazing. And the honesty that came through on that was just so cool.
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys. By the way, I don't think I've ever met you, Devin. It's nice to meet you officially. I've watched.
Oh.
I don't know. I've watched you guys, but yeah, I don't think we've officially met. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you. I think I got back onto Twitter this last month or so, and I think that was right around when your show was kicking off and everyone was talking about you two and changing their names and doing the whole Twitter thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I was super involved with Twitter, then I had a break for a while, came back, and I was like, especially with the whole Yang Gang people, I was like, what's going on? Who are these?
You don't want to know what's going on.
Yeah,
Devin.
like why did everybody change their name all of a sudden?
yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right. So
Well,
yeah,
it's
Azerbaijan and Armenia like 101. So where they're located is in the Caucasus Mountains, which is south of Russia and east of Turkey.
I know that much.
And most people know, most people know-ish where Turkey is, right? Like you got the Mediterranean with Italy, and Turkey's all the way on the east side. And then if you also remember, there's this big giant like lakey-looking thing called the Black Sea on the north side of Turkey. So on the east side of the Black Sea is the Caucasus Mountains. So they're in there. Armenia is a primarily Christian nation, and Azerbaijan is a primarily Muslim nation. And inside the western side of Azerbaijan is this area that is ethnically current day Armenian predominantly and Christian as well. But it's within Azerbaijan's internationally recognized borders. And it used to be part of Armenia, but when the Soviets rolled in, they said, all right, well, now you're part of Azerbaijan, but all of you are just part of us anyway. So all of your differences that you've had, stub it, show it, you're part of the Soviet Union now, right? So when the Soviet Union dissolved, it, became actually administrated by Azerbaijan, and the Armenians didn't like that. There's been various forms of rebellion, if you would say, over the few decades since, including a spat in, I don't remember what year it was, 2003 or so, somewhere around there, where Armenia actually moved troops in and basically took over control of it. So internationally, it's been recognized as Azerbaijan, but it's been basically de facto under Armenia. And by the way, it didn't used to be so heavily Armenian and Christian. It used to be both Armenian and Azerbaijani Muslim, except during that conflict, the Azerbaijanis were displaced, or Ziri. I'm not actually sure what adjective I should say. So anyway, so that's background. It turns out that drawing lines on a map is a bad way to make country borders, right? Who would have thought?
Yeah, let's talk about Israel.
Yeah. So current day, they are basically on the brink of war. In the last week, over 30 soldiers have died between the two sides. There's been actual fighting going on. Turkey has pledged support to Azerbaijan if a war does break out. Meanwhile, Russia has active military bases inside Armenia. So to any student of history, this is running a lot of parallels with how World War I started with Serbia. Literally, it's Russia versus Ottomans. Or Turkey, right? With a much smaller state.
Well, you were right when you said Ottomans, because it was the Ottoman Empire at that time. So
it was the Ottoman Empire, but of course the center of the Ottoman Empire power was
Turkey. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Was in Turkey.
And the Archduke something.
Archduke Ferdinand of Serbia got shot.
then
Started World War I.
Was assassinated like a Kennedy.
Yeah, so there's a lot of worrying parallels, quite frankly, to how World War I started and how this conflict is potentially going to escalate. I think it less likely than more likely that this would turn into a world war. However, I give it, probably just under coin flip odds that Azerbaijan and Armenia actually go to war on this. This is a serious deal for those people. And to further underscore just how serious a deal it is, the amount of Azerbaijani that were displaced in the first conflict that I mentioned works to be about 1 out of 8 in the entire population of Azerbaijan today. So everyone knows someone at least that was directly affected by the previous conflict. So this is a big deal to these people. This is a big deal for them.
So you're saying that essentially Turkey and Russia are set up to be opposed, right? Dragged in. Yeah. Turkey's the one that explicitly said they would side. Russia hasn't. It's just that they have bases there. Presumably they have bases there in Armenia because they are allies with Armenia, presumably. But does that mean that Russia's gonna? Does it seem like they would commit against Turkey?
So here's one thing that's certain: they're not going to surrender control of their military base, right? So if the conflict were to get close enough that the security of the military base is threatened, then they basically have to step in. You know, unless assurances were made that, oh yeah, you leave your military base. But like that's just not a position that Russia wants to get in the first place. Russia has an international reputation and image to uphold. It can't look like the weak guy. It can't look like the, oh well, you know, we didn't want to fight, and yeah, Armenia, yeah, you're just off on your own. Go help yourself.
Yeah,
You know,
Russia's not pulling out from their bases.
right.
Plus,
Yeah.
if I'm-
Yeah, Russia can't afford to look like that in
Yeah.
front of the international community. So that's not an option for them. So Russia is, of course, pleading like the United States is pleading, say, hey, guys, everybody just calm down, right? But like Erdogan basically is egging Azerbaijan on. Erdogan's the president of Turkey. And like I said, this is a serious issue for a lot of people in both of those countries. So there's a very, very, very real possibility that this turns into a full-scale war.
Also, I'm not sure what America's current deployment map looks like, but I do know when I was going through with Armed Forces Entertainment in that area in the early 2010s, Pierce is probably more up to date on where we have troops and where we don't have troops than I would be. But like I went through that area with Armed Forces Entertainment, and we have U.S. troops like loaned out to UN bases, I think they were, like throughout that area.
That wouldn't surprise
We would
me.
be in the middle of it as well.
I honestly, I don't know what the UN involvement in the area is. I'm not aware of any UN peacekeepers, but that doesn't mean that they're not there.
I just
So
know
I don't
that
know.
like in the early 2010s, I want to say like 2012 or 2013, I was like in that area, like doing shows for U.S. troops and British troops as part of the UN, like whatever the UN was doing in that area at that time. I don't know if they're still there, but if we do still have troops in that area, it would mean implications of dragging us into the war if something were to happen to one of our guys.
Yeah.
And that would immediately put us at odds probably with Russia.
Well, I would almost say that, except a similar situation occurred when Turkey invaded northern Syria / Kurdistan, and we did nothing.
Because we had
turned
just
the
pulled out,
trucks
didn't we?
around and just got out of the way.
Yeah, that was
So-
here recently. We just pulled out, like out of there, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just like pulled out and said, have them, kill them, whatever.
Yeah, basically our strongest ally in the region, you know, the fledgling, not official nation state of Kurdistan. We just said, all right, well, you know, thanks for helping us beat ISIS. Now that they're pretty much gone, Turkey wants to come invade and kill you, and we're just gonna peace out of here. It was absolutely infuriating.
Yeah.
Nations with allies succeed. Nations without allies fall. And these were our allies that literally fought side by side with us against ISIS, and we left them to get completely screwed. And it was only by the fact that Turkey didn't want even more power that they still have any bit of Kurdistan to control. But the western half of Kurdistan, the western half of the Syrian Kurdistan that Turkey like claimed and wanted to take over, they did. They still have it today. It's effectively Turkey now. Internationally on a map, it falls in Syria, but Syria doesn't have a strong government right now. So it's Turkey for all intents and purposes. Turkey won, if you will. And Turkey is supposed to be our ally, by the way. And they're part of NATO. Like, they're supposed to be a strong ally of ours. And over many of the years, they have been and were, but, well, our world is changing. You know, I think a lot of us have gotten too comfortable with the peace that we've had over the last several decades, particularly since the fall of the Soviet Union. And I think we've taken it a bit for granted and have forgotten what's necessary to maintain that peace, if you will.
Yeah, a lot of people want to talk about how, like, you know, let's bring our boys home. Our boys shouldn't be overseas, you know, for, you know, no reason. People forget that with presence comes peace. Like, just knowing that we're there, knowing that we're in the area, that brings peace. You know, it may make some uncomfortable, but at the same time, it's going to make a lot of other people like, hey, the U.S. is there. It's going to be okay. It's peaceful. They can stabilize it, and Donald
Yes.
Trump on a mission since taking office to just, like, I want to bring all of our troops home from everywhere across the world, bullcrap, is he's forgetting that, the presence of the U.S. and other countries brings peace to the world. We not that there's actually world peace, but at the same time, it gives us a semblance of peace in areas where horrible things have happened.
Yeah, we are the biggest guarantor of peace in the world today.
Yeah.
Obviously, we are not preventing and stopping every conflict, but without a doubt, we are the biggest guarantor of peace today. That does not mean that just because we are involved somewhere that our presence is done properly or a good thing. So, like, for example, you're mentioning our troops, all throughout the world. Germany would lose their shit if we left, if we just overnight took out all of our troops, because Germany is not militarily prepared for the requirements to defend a nation of that size with the current military that they have. They have effectively become reliant on the United States military.
We also still have some restrictions on the type of military Germany can build, don't we?
I wouldn't be surprised if we did. I think it's 100 years that goes. So I think we still do. Yeah.
And that 100 years started all over again in 48 when they finally settled everything as far as that goes. So we're not talking about the 100 years from the 1920s. We're talking about the 100 years from the
the end of World War II. Yeah.
That's definitely true with Japan still.
Yeah.
So yes, Japan is not allowed to have a military. Instead, they have a defense force. It's not a military. Wink, wink. Right. But
we're branding, man. We don't have astronauts. We have a space force.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. Those are both neither here nor there. That being said, though, our presence in, say, Afghanistan could have been a good thing. It should have been a good thing. Today, I think that there's a lot of legitimate questions on whether it is. I can tell you that we have completely messed up Afghanistan. And how it should have been approached. And because we did not set out from the beginning with the attitude and willingness to do what was required, we set ourselves up to fail. Our casus belli was just. It's why we had the largest world international coalition in the entire world for any conflict ever. The government of Afghanistan was the Taliban at the time, and the Taliban was giving safe harbor to Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda flew planes into civilian buildings, right? So that's a pretty good casus belli, and the rest of the world agreed, and that's why I think over 100 nations sent some form of military aid into Afghanistan. So,
in all fairness, we've been screwing over Afghanistan since the 70s and 80s
that's another story.
We technically built the Taliban. And then we left them in the middle of nowhere, and that resentment built, and then they flew planes, and we made our own enemy on that one. We totally fucked up.
Yeah, we did not build the Taliban. I think that's something that's overstated. That being said, it's
an oversimplification, but we trained everyone in the war tactics that were used to train the Taliban.
Yeah, so you have the Soviets in charge, and you have people trying to fight the Soviets, and the United States in the Cold War with Soviet Russia goes, hey, the enemy of our enemy is our friend. So then we help the people there, and they succeed, and then we go, all right, deuces, see you later. Not our problem anymore.
Yeah, and we made all these grand scheme promises of schools and education and democracy, and we're going to help you do this and this and this, and we're just we kind of lied about that. Peace out.
Yeah, we could have had a different approach about it, for sure. But regardless, we ended up with a situation in 2001 where we invaded Afghanistan, and like I said, it was a just cause. However, once we were there, we didn't really have a plan. The plan was, all right, you guys, now you have democracy, completely ignoring the regional relationships within the communities of Afghanistan itself, you know, as if it was all just one homogenous people and one, you know, homogenous nation. It wasn't. Also completely ignoring the idea that a democracy which is dependent on an educated populace, that should ring true to us today, the required building blocks, if you will, for a democracy in Afghanistan just weren't there. You know, the level of development of the country, the level of education of the country, historical studies, perspectives, you know, communication, just infrastructure, just none of it was there, right? So the idea of just, hey, congrats, you got a democracy, now have fun, that's not going to work. What's going to happen is what did happen. You know, you're going to have basically the country balkanize and fragment itself. And you're going to have some people at the top try to be strongmen and basically just graft as much as they can because, you know, the party's going to end at some point, and, you know, just they live it up until they can, until the next guy comes in charge, and, you know, lives it up until, again, the next guy comes in charge. And they don't really have any incentive to actually fix things because, hey, they still got money just for being in charge. And fixing things is hard, right? So, like, not to mention it puts you at risk because sometimes some people aren't on board with fixing things. Sometimes people like the balkanized states, such as any drug warlord in the entire country. So
I'm honestly trying to think of like other examples of something like this, right? Like, and not just with Israel or with our intervention, but like, for example, Kashmir and Israel, like what would, I'm trying to think through parallels of like what has been done in the past and what we could really do here. And to your point, like if we do intervene, like what are we going to do if we intervene? Because we can't just go in, resolve the conflict, and then leave people to it without any semblance of like democratic structure or whatever. Like however we're going to do it.
So sorry, the conflict in Azerbaijan and Armenia is not like the conflict in Afghanistan, right? And I'm like you're looking for other cases, and that's what pisses me off about this. So nation building, right? This is a term you guys have heard. So legitimately, that's what we needed to commit to in Afghanistan. Our two options were, our two good options were, one, come in, wreck shit up, capture Osama bin Laden, get out. All right. So we're really good at wrecking shit up, quite frankly, you know, and it took us a long time to find Osama bin Laden. But after we had already, you know, dethroned the Taliban, as you were, we then tried to kind of nation build, and we didn't actually commit to nation building. You know, we committed to nation building to the extent of like, here's some foreign aid and, you know, here's some recommended laws, but you guys choose if you want them. Like it wasn't any attempt. Actual nation building, which we've done, actual nation building is a 20+ year commitment. Realistically, it's a 40-year commitment. It takes 40 years to build a nation. 40 years. Try selling that to the American electorate. Like, try.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
That's not going to happen. But we've done that. That's the thing. We've done that. When like rebuilding Japan, rebuilding Western Germany, or any of the other Marshall Plan nations. Look at South Korea as an example, right? Like South Korea was poorer than North Korea before the Korean War. And then after the Korean War, it had nothing. Like basically not an inch of that country did not suffer under the war. All right. Like the entire war took over the entirety of that country. You know, so like
we stayed there forever, and we introduced them to the Backstreet Boys, which gave them the idea for BTS. And now we have BTS. They have given the world BTS.
Honestly, cultural influence.
Who look like women who donate millions of dollars to just everything that's love. It's beautiful.
We could have had an Afghani BTS by now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh
well,
my God.
Not by now. Not by now.
Well, maybe in a couple of
years. 20 years, but
right now new kids on the block. But you know,
give it another like 7 years. If we had done things in Afghanistan, right? Yeah, we'd have an Afghani BTS. Yes, like actually, yes. Not joking. Sorry.
I said the problem is we've all collectively forgotten that the U.S. has done that before, and now our only context for attempting to nation build is what where you've been doing in Afghanistan, and what Jason was saying earlier about how like the United States being present generally keeps the peace. And while that even if that would still be true technically now, I think it's been 18 years or 19 years since at this point since we've been in those conflicts. I guess 18 years, and I don't know. It just feels like the efficacy of United States presence in a region to stabilize and to like build up a nation. It's like a boy cried wolf situation. It feels like to me, like collectively, where if we've been just sitting there doing what we've been doing in Afghanistan for so long, and people are so sick of it, that now you have a conflict like this, or something else that arises that actually involves proper nations getting pulled into the mix, like you said, is actually a recipe for a World War I type setup.
Yeah,
where it could actually justify some sort of engagement or presence or whatever. People aren't gonna buy it. They're like, okay, you've been saying that for almost 20 years and you haven't committed to that, and it's been like a money pit, or it's been a disaster for the people there and for us. And so I think just the trust in the broader trust of our citizens that we can actually succeed in that.
Well, I mean, I think it's also come with a lot of, evolution of how like our country has progressed as far as like technology and stuff like that. We're now a nation of, we expect everything to develop more quickly. We expect a new iPhone to be generations ahead of the next generation.
We're very impatient.
Every year we expect something completely new and completely different. Like, remember when cell phones first came out? They were huge for like 5 years before we got the first like Nokia with Snake on it. And then they were like that brick phone for like another 3-4 years. And then it just became better and better every year. And we expect that progress now as a nation to go into somewhere and say, hey, we have to commit to this for 20 years when we can't even commit to a phone for 12 months.
But realistically, I'm saying 40 years. Realistically.
Yeah, 20, 40 years, yeah.
We've screwed it up. U.S. has screwed it up because, again, our only real context, especially, like the Afghanistan presence, which, like Pierce said, we did not commit to, started up right when the internet age happened, talking about phones, talking about like technology. Yep. And so now, like, that's the only thing that exists in our conscious. People aren't saying, well, look at Seoul, like, look what we've done on the Korean Peninsula. It's like people don't even know that like was a U.S. effort, really. And
trust me, I'm out there trying to educate people on Twitter like all the time that, hey, we built Korea. we built Japan.
The current United States didn't do that, though. And so the current United States has been doing what it's been doing. And so, you can't engender trust that the current United States will do a build Korea type thing when it's been not doing that for 18 or 19 years. And, talking about being impatient and technology and stuff, like something that we all have thought about, I'll speak for me, way more than foreign policy, right, has been domestic stuff, especially with Yang and the primary and like democratic reform and all this stuff, or healthcare or marijuana legalization. Like, we're even on outside of technology, on actual politics changes. I think we're pretty impatient compared to the scheme of things. So, like, even if it will take a handful of presidential terms to enact certain changes we want to happen here, even that's not much compared to a 40-year commitment to, whatever foreign situation there is. And so, I don't know if this escalates, involvement would be accepted, U.S. involvement, especially when like we almost had the fuel to justify this long arm involvement because of how like brazen 9/11 was, right? Like we had a common enemy, and like go get them. But if the average American's going to hear about this like obscure conflict in Turkey or like countries they haven't even heard of, even more so than Afghanistan and the Middle East.
You have to remember, like, I'm not sure what like my ox age is, but like I know you're like what, 21, Devin?
23.
23. Yeah, Pierce is like
29.
29. So like Pierce and I were sitting in school watching the towers fall. Like you grew up in an age where you two probably grew up in an age where you guys had Facebook telling you, "Oh, it's all a conspiracy theory." 9/11 was fake.
Yeah, I don't.
Alex Jones lizard people did it.
I don't have any memory of 9/11. I feel like speak about that. Like I don't remember seeing it.
Yeah. I wrote a paper in middle school. Basically, the point of the paper was how my year, I was in 5th grade, how my year seemed to be the youngest to get it. How like the 4th graders didn't even understand. Like they saw it happen on TV, but they didn't get it, is the shortest way I could put it.
Yeah.
How I identified myself at the time, I'm still a kid, how I identified my year as the youngest year to really get, pre-life 9/11 to post-life 9/11.
Yeah, it was definitely.
Yeah.
It was like I was in 7th grade, and I like literally still vividly remember that day because I was like getting ready for school, and as soon as I came down, no one in my family had left to leave or to like go anywhere yet, and my sister usually is in school by then, and my dad is usually at work by then, and I just remember everyone was staring at the TV, and that's like they barely ever do that. And I came down really watching the towers fall as I walked down the stairs. And I just like, I pretty much can't forget that day because a lot changed in our nation. Like so much went from what went into like, I think a lot, we realized that our nation was vulnerable and people were afraid, and it was very legitimate. Like a major attack happened. We had no idea where it came from, and a lot of people died, and it was like devastating. So yeah, I still remember that day. It was crazy. We had family out there too.
If you don't mind me asking, this could be an uncomfortable question. Yeah, I would love to poke your brain on your own personal experiences on the before after, not in the macro sense. I know like you as an individual, that's what you're really interested in, but I mean like you on the personal sense, like walking down the street,
Yeah,
like,
no, I can go into it. It was
because being frank, you're not white, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. And so and also I'm a Hindu, so I'm not Muslim either. But just coming from that dichotomy, I can't speak for Muslim people. It must have been so much more difficult for them. Mm-hmm. But just as an Indian person, everything changed. Even that day in school, it went from being totally normal to me being bullied every single day, literally every single day. And it got to a point where there were certain kids in class who would just talk about you don't belong here, you need to go back to your country and all that shit. And I was like, wow, this is coming. I've never heard this before, and it's coming from a place of fear, but I'm definitely on edge. And they're obviously, yeah, dude. Seriously, Pierce is so smart. Seriously, I learn from him every single time we're on with him. But yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I had never been stopped in the airport before. Now every single time I go through the airport, even now, I get stopped. And for probably 10 years after that, it was always getting to at least that second level of security where they would bring you into another room and go through all of your shit and test it and everything. And I was a kid when that was happening, right? So it was just weird to see that. But then I had a really good friend group, so I knew that normal people still existed and that most people were not that afraid. And it was just being able to have a conversation with people and breaking down that fear. But it was the first time for me that I really saw that like encapsulate people and like drive them every single day. Like I saw people just legitimately speak out and say things that I would never have expected them to say, just out of fear and hatred. And it was like really strange for me. And I remember, so I personally had just like an experience where I did get like bullied in class, and it was pretty bad. But I know that like a lot of people like had even worse experiences. So I don't know, like for me it was just more of a mindset change. I think I grew up really fast in that moment. And just started learning a lot and started learning how to like talk to other people too, because I just didn't realize like how much people didn't know. And just the fact that like people didn't know the difference between like Hinduism and like Islam, and even like coming from Hinduism, there's so much fear of Islam and like Muslim people because of this like all the crazy shit that happens in India. And that was why I actually brought up Kashmir, because that was probably my oldest like reference point for this type of like battling over a region between two major nations. And like a lot of Indian rhetoric is just built on like fear of like Muslim people and of Islam. And it's sad, kind of like the way that Modi got into power specifically is on a lot of anti-Muslim rhetoric. And it makes me sad to see like my home nation. I mean, obviously America is my home now, but like like India just going down that path of like literally, I think 3 years ago, Modi passed some law that specifically listed Muslim people as like less than like other humans in India. And it's insane. I can pull it up in a minute, but like, yeah, it was just insane to me to like see it go down that road. So that's like where I don't want America to go, is like to keep going down that road. And I don't think it has been. So I think like people, thankfully, eventually, like this fear started breaking down. But I think now it's to like Pierce, your point, and Devin's point, that like we've just lost trust in our government to be able to like do these things properly and to like fix these problems properly. And I think like that's what I want to see more, is just like I want to be able to trust the government more to handle these problems properly and to yeah. But anyway, sorry, I'm like rambling at this point, but it was just. Yeah, it was a pretty big change, but it wasn't like, I think for me, I just didn't have too many negative experiences because of like my friend group and everything, but I definitely did like notice a huge change in just around me. And especially this is going to sound kind of weird probably, but like I think my parents got it a lot more than I did, because I never really had an accent, but like my parents have had accents, or they still do actually. They have like both of my parents have really thick Indian accents. It's kind of amazing that they've been here for this long and it's still that thick. I love them though. But yeah, like I think they've just gotten it a lot more than I have, because they're in like that older demographic. And I know my dad specifically has gotten it a lot more. One of my friends who is Sikh, so Sikh people wear turbans, and it's especially hard for him because every time he goes through, he has to unwrap it and everything. And at least that was what it was for a while, until they got like the 360 scans and everything, which is a lot nicer. But yeah, like it was just the dynamic kind of changed, and it was more just educating people about like, hey, this is, just something that we aren't as familiar with, but just like everything else, there are radical groups that exist. And unfortunately, and not just unfortunately, like I don't want to downplay 9/11 or anything like that. It was fucking terrible. But yeah, like it's just tough, because it's like you guys even mentioned it, like we kind of created our own enemies. And yeah, so sorry, that probably sounded pretty dreary.
You gave me pretty much exactly what I was looking for, man. Thank you for sharing your experiences.
Yeah, of course.
I know myself growing up, I grew up in Fremont, California. So this town is like 10% Caucasian. And in fact, there's an area of it called Little Kabul. So, right, like, I know my experience post 9/11 is not like the rest of the countries.
Well, so that's a really good point. That puts it into perspective for me because I grew up in Minnesota. So like in Minnesota, we have like, it's like 95% Caucasian or something crazy, or at least it was back then when I was growing up. So like, yeah, that's.
I have family in Minnesota. That sounds right.
Yeah, right. So, especially back then, like now I know that, and there's a pretty big Indian community there. But even then, like when I went to school, I was like maybe one of 3 like brown kids in a class of like 600. So
I've been to the mall.
Yeah, I got picked on.
It is so white, it's like eggshell.
Yeah, I got picked on for being, the only white kid in class. Which
that's kind of awesome.
Right, yeah.
I grew up like.
Well, not that you got picked on. Sorry, just that you were in that diverse of a group. Right. Sorry, I didn't mean it that way.
I know it's all right. But yeah, I definitely have different perspectives. And then I moved to Utah, which was like the exact flip. It was like your Minnesota example, where suddenly it seems like everybody was white. So very, very different neighborhoods to grow up on. I think it gave me a lot of good perspective in the world.
Sure.
And yeah, if we want to go that direction, it's unfortunate that I guess, okay, so probably the most concerning thing about Trump's behavior on the debate itself was basically his indication that he is going to not accept a potential defeat, and that he is going to try to not only contest it in courts, but actually have, I don't know what term I should use. I feel like militia is too strong a term. Sorry? What did you say?
Poll watchers.
Poll watchers.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, in the porn industry, they just call them fluffers, but
So I'm actually more concerned with after the fact, not at the polling. But after the fact, basically, he used those exact words, and that is a call to arms. That is literally a call to arms.
Yeah.
So
now he's trying to use the excuse he didn't know what he was saying exactly, and he didn't know exactly what the Proud Boys were. This is a man who gets daily intelligence updates from the Southern Law Policy Institute, from the FBI, from the CIA, all who have done reports on the Proud Boys and their like domestic terrorist things.
You can brief Trump. That doesn't mean he's listening.
I know, but still.
Yeah, and that's extremely concerning. Like, I don't think that we would enter a civil war, but I do think, our current system, we're too economically intertwined with each other to enter a full civil war. But I do believe that people can die.
Yeah,
like I do believe that due to the call of arms that Trump did, and I think is likely to do, that people will die.
That's what I worry about most, to be honest. Like the debate was painful to watch last night for me personally, just because I don't appreciate any of the personal attacks at all. I just wish they had talked about actual policy. But I mean, that's too much to ask for, but yeah, like it does definitely concern me, because I feel like it's propagating, or at least legitimizing, some of the violence that's to come, and some of the violence that's already happened. So yeah, it definitely worries me.
I mean, he literally stood on stage and defended Kyle Rittenhouse. He didn't say his name, but he said, if a young man can't defend his business in the center of a street with a gun, what is America, or something like that. I forget his exact phrasing, but it was something along those lines. It wasn't as extreme, but it was something like that, like along those lines. And I was just like, seriously? And then oh my God. And the one thing I want to point out, though, is I tweeted it earlier today. The only time every liberal in America has ever been on the exact same page is when he said there's not been a single death resulted from my rallies. I know every single liberal at the exact same time in unison said, Herman Cain.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, and not to like use Herman Cain in that way. I don't mean to, use him in his death, but it's like I just don't appreciate that we're literally lying about his death from being at the Tulsa rally. It's insane to me.
It's insanity.
Yeah, you're right. I was sitting with a couple people, and you were not alone in the Herman Cain reference. So it was funny that you mentioned that, because the same thing happened right here.
No, I shouted it. I heard my roommate in the other room shout it at the exact same time.
Yeah. If you're all right, actually going back, so Mayank, you mentioned how India passed a law kind of making Muslims have a reduced status or so. So this is actually something new to me. Now, like, Southern India is not my like area of expertise. I know more than the average bear, but that's not my area of expertise. So the first result I got that I think might line up with what you're talking about, and I want to ask if this is it, or if I should keep looking. In 2019, the Modi administration passed the Citizenship Amendment Act.
That is it.
Okay, yeah, I figured that was it. So it fast tracks the immigration and asylum claims of non-Muslim immigrants from neighboring Muslim majority countries of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. So, which inherently means that the Muslim immigrants from those nations are going to be put behind the queue.
Exactly. And that's been, go ahead, Devin. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, it seems to me like that's certainly foreboding, because that was recent. That was in December 2019. That wasn't even a full year ago. It's certainly foreboding in how you do that. All right, what might you do next? I wouldn't quite say that turns current citizens, though, into...
No, it doesn't. I definitely misspoke in that regard. It does put into motion a lot of what Modi has been talking about and what he's been pushing because of his backing with like Hindu nationalist groups. Right. So a lot of the rhetoric has been around that, but yes, it's specifically related to immigration, and it's something that they're hoping to actually pull into other law as well, regarding what they're doing. But yeah, it is just immigration.
I remember when I visited India, I had to fill out this whole like questionnaire of like, have I ever been to Afghanistan? Have I ever been to Pakistan? Do I know anybody that's from Afghanistan or Pakistan? And I mean, I understood why I was being asked, because there's, it's a broad way to do a security check, I guess, if you will, because there's, for anybody that's not watching, there's some legitimate violence that happens between Muslims and Hindus inside India. And to Mayank's point, the current prime minister is probably not doing a whole lot to reduce that violence.
Yeah, basically, like just a quick 2-minute history. Basically what happened is, okay, cool. When India won its independence from Britain, and that was largely due to peaceful protesting and peaceful movements with Gandhi, but there is a large chunk of it that was not peaceful as well. And after that time, basically India had to decide how it was going to split up between or the different regions, and that was India, Bangladesh, I think parts of Nepal and Pakistan, and then also Kashmir. And basically what happened is when they set all of this up, a lot of the Muslim people moved to Pakistan, and that entire border was pretty solidified, except for Kashmir, which was this region that India has pretty much historically fought over since that time. Pakistan believes that they own that part of the region. India believes that they own part of that region. The Kashmiri people have pretty much gone from between wanting their own independence to now wanting to be part of India from a majority side. But I know that there are still parts of that region that definitely want to be part of Pakistan. And there's it's just been a constant battle. And literally that border has been on fire for probably the last 40 years, with little skirmishes back and forth that have honestly been very religiously charged. Like a lot of them are religiously charged, and even like back in like right after India won its independence, there was a lot of Hindu and Muslim like violence against each other. Like and this is where a lot of that like Hindu nationalist and anti-Muslim rhetoric comes from, is because after that time, because the two groups were like trying to fight for their home right after Britain left. They now like we're trying to split this up evenly, and obviously we know how all of these conflicts end. It's never peaceful, and like even in India, they're like the Muslim people that stayed back, they have always been ridiculed like from that point, and it's because India is predominantly Hindu, but there's definitely still support from Muslim people in India, but it's very heavily not like supportive of Muslim people, unfortunately. And back then there were so many terrorist attacks like between the two nations of primarily India and Pakistan. Like Indians would go over the border and like blow shit up, honestly, and like Pakistan did the same thing. Like my uncle actually grew up and his entire college class died in a terrorist attack on like a bus blowing up that he was late for because he slept in that day. And so for him, it's like a very personal thing, right? Like he as a Hindu has like seen a Muslim attack, unfortunately, that killed everyone in his class, and now he is a very strong Hindu nationalist, and like literally nothing that I say will break him out of it. I've tried to have conversations with him. This is something that I've honestly been trying to figure out how to break down, is like people that have gone through these times where they've seen this like and because they've seen this conflict, right? And because he personally has had this horrible experience, it's like so difficult to break this down for him. And there are a lot of Indian people and like Pakistani people and just like Muslim and Hindu people that have these experiences because it's so fresh still. Like it's within the last 40, 50 years. Does that kind of give you guys
Oh no, definitely.
Okay.
There is a, I don't know. Yeah, I'll use the word terrorism. There's a terrorism threat there, and it just begets more conflict that begets more terrorism, if you will. And like
exactly.
your friends, I don't know if he'll ever be able to change his mind, particularly in the 21st century, where he's likely entered himself into a echo chamber that just reinforces.
100%, and that's what I worry about. Is like he has already found that echo chamber, and he's a lot of like the news articles and stuff that he sends me are from just you can tell it's from an echo chamber because it's like far right, very anti-Muslim publishing. They're looking for a specific type of messaging to push out, and especially in this day and age, like you said, it's like you can build that echo chamber way more readily.
Access to the internet and
you're the person. Go ahead, Jason.
I said with access to the internet and technology, and it's that echo, like, and social media in general, that echo chamber, it just grows quickly, and it gets louder and louder every day. I mean, we inside the Yang Gang live in an echo chamber like constantly. Because we all follow each other on social media and stuff, and if you don't step away from that echo chamber, you're never going to hear what's actually going on. You're only going to hear it skewed a certain way. So, I mean, we live in one of those.
Yeah. And it's I don't have a good fix about it. Like we've talked about this exact topic several times on the show. There's no easy fix.
It's like the first thing I think we have to do is, like, to Devin's point, is just get that trust back and like show that we can build long-term plans in something. Like I worry about is that even domestically, we're not able to build long-term plans right now. Like I feel like people in leadership and even us as individuals, it's so hard to focus on anything past like the 1 year mark right now, that most people aren't doing that. And
or even just like a presidential term, right? Like
right.
The Obama administration, they set up Obamacare, and and Trump has been, and will continue to try to be like, fuck that. And then someone casually, you mentioned the Space Force earlier, like they set up the Space Force. Like Biden.
That is a shitty sitcom with Steve Carell out of it. I mean,
because almost because it's like it's a Trump thing that people kind of think is dumb, right? Like that's just like a public opinion thing. Biden could be like, Trump didn't know what he was doing with this. Let's get rid of it. And then he'll set up his climate plan, and then there'll be Ted Cruz in 2028 will be like, fuck that plan, and let's do this instead. And then we'll just not be able to do anything. And so if you can, we can start to like establish a public trust maybe by establishing some long-term plans. But I don't even know how you would like you have to ensure that any like steps we take.
Right, exactly.
I have an answer for you.
Yeah, what was that, Chris?
I have an answer for you. So it's the concept of a guiding star. So the idea that there is going to be something that is constant, that will still be there for you to use as a reference point, as a guide, as a guiding star, after you leave, because that's what you need. You need continuity. Like you can have the best leader in the world or the best leader in a company's history, or you name it, or whatever. But after that person leaves, somebody else is gonna take charge, right? And like you still need to continue on going the direction that you're trying to go. And it's not like in the complex world that a direction has like a compass. It doesn't have a compass, right? So you need a guiding star that tells you where it is that you need to go. The easiest guiding star that quite frankly political lever pullers have figured out is unfortunately not for something but against something. It's most easiest to tell where you are by putting yourself in contrast to something else. So for the United States after World War II, we had the Cold War. Hey, there's the Soviet Union. All right, so what are they doing? Well, we need to not do that for a lot of things. And then a bunch of other things, it was, all right, we need to fight them on whatever it was, lots of proxy wars. But, like the Soviet Union was effectively our guiding star in the post-World War II environment. And then after the Soviet Union fell, we were overconfident and just decided, all right, yeah, we're in charge now, we're on top. And we just split ourselves, if you will, and where we decided that we were going. And if it feels like, man, why can't the government just get anything done right? I mean, that's largely why, because you need that guiding star. So the United States people have been actually clamoring for this. That's why we elected an authoritarian leader in Trump, because an authoritarian can be our guiding star. It's one of the easier guiding stars that you can have. And unfortunately, I think we can probably all agree that that's not the guiding star that we want. Mm-hmm. And the Democrats have lost themselves because they've also made Trump their guiding star, but once again in opposition rather than in for. So that's part of also why we're dissolving, if you will,
right,
during the last 4 years, because it's all been about that guiding star, and it's not a good guiding star. So that's the actual answer for you, Devin. Like, it's actually quite possible. That's also the good news. It's quite possible. We just need to decide on a guiding star for ourselves. And in the current day, there's no evil Soviet Union. We have a lesser, still fairly evil Putin-led Russia. We have also an economically intertwined, domestically evil China. But
we had terrorism for a while, but
right,
kind of like we're not able to think about that.
I mean, it's kind of like America's in like a midlife crisis. We're like Kevin Spacey in America. Kind of. We're going to quit our job and we're going to start working out in our garage and smoke a lot of weed and have uncomfortable feelings about something about a young girl that's like way too young for us, and then hopefully we get it fixed, or someone's going to put a bullet in the back of our head because we didn't return the film.
Well, I hope that we don't get put down. That's we're kind of a big thing to fall if we get put down. I don't
I'm
like
just
to think
using
what the
it
world
as like
would
a
look like.
reference.
Yeah, I hope we end up
Like, we're in a
smoking weed
midlife
and getting
crisis.
buff in that
We've got to
garage.
figure out where this goes.
I get so Pierce. That is true what you're saying about the guiding star thing, but then in your description of the guiding star, you just pointed out that our guiding star has just been adversarial guiding stars.
Well, after World War II, it was, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and again, kind of like back to what I was saying earlier, we're like, we don't remember anything before that. Our entire society only really knows adversarial guiding stars now, and so you would use a guiding star to shift and kind of get in the direction we want. But I think people are so used to, negative opposition guiding stars that, so I guess the question to you, or whatever, is how do we shift people? How do we shift the nation to be okay with a positive guiding star? Because as we've seen, just anything negative or anything adversarial is just way more.
I know the answer. We need to put BTS in charge.
Okay,
I should have seen that coming.
They are a positive guiding star. Everyone loves them. There's nothing that you can hate about these guys. They're almost literally perfect in every single way. I mean, they rap, they play their own instruments, they do rock, they do pop, they dance. I mean, the humanitarians, they're a positive guiding star. If we just put them in charge and follow them, we're golden.
We should get rid of the whole president vice president thing and just establish an oligarchy, like a council that's just how many other
made up of Korean boy bands from here until the end of time. Every now and then we can throw in like a Kevin Richardson or a Justin Timberlake. Well, no, Justin Timberlake's busy doing like real stuff like Jessica Biel and like making good music still. But Joey Fatone's probably doing. Well, no, he has a really cool Food Network show. JC Chazé, throw in one of him every now and then. But mainly just stick to the Korean boy bands.
Well, the Korean wave is taking over the world.
Would it be like a similar term system then to like Congress, or would it be?
You'd be lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah, lifetime until like the South Korean government kills you like they do with their boy bands every now and then. They have been known to kill their own off. They replace them with a new or hotter thing that's cheaper to maintain. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, in that case, it would be like 18 to 22 or something.
Yeah.
I guess 4 years. Yeah, 4 years.
Yeah.
Like the opposite of like the age restrictions we have now. You can't.
Right.
22.
You have to be young.
Yeah.
No,
The only thing that I've heard as a concept of that is at least established in like policy, because there's like the symbolic guiding stars that aren't like codified, and then there's like maybe some actual codified stuff. Yang with his climate plan back in the day, right, was like had that established in terms of solving the consistency problem of an amendment, although that's an amendment, which is hard to do. But I think that, I don't know, we haven't experienced this, but I feel like if a government, whether it is just Congress or like an administration, gets into power and actually does something, like just one thing, it could be like Yang mentioned this, we'll talk about this in terms of UBI being the thing that like makes people be like, oh, the government can actually do stuff. And then, maybe that is UBI, maybe that's something else. And then you can pique people's interest in terms of like trust, right? It at least stops the trust from just descending. It like stops the acceleration. And then like you could get the ball rolling the other way, but a single leader would only have a term or two to do that, which
right now, a single leader, like a presidency, is only 100 days per term, as it is. I mean, we elect these people for 4 years, and they only actually get to govern for 100 days.
Wait.
Because it's like the way the things fall. Because you're in there, you have your first 100 days in office, and then you're gearing up for the midterms, like the 2 year, like for the House runs, and occasionally like the House and Senate runs, depending upon when it falls. And then after that, that happens, you're basically right back into fundraising and campaigning for yourself.
Yeah.
And then you hopefully get elected for a second term, and then you have your first 100 days again. I mean,
we can't put all our stock. I know a president, I guess, ideally is supposed to be a guiding star, right? Like, again, that's kind of
he should. I agree that he should. So
we used to have presidents that were, but then presidencies kind of became on.
Still, hey, it's your other Miyaka joining us now.
Hey, what's up?
We totally just went through.
So Jason, you know how I can tell that you took a political science class? Jason, you know how I can tell that you took a political science class? The 100 days thing that you just said. So it's a common.
I have a degree, but thank you.
Sorry. Yes, I shouldn't have downplayed it like that. Yeah, it's a common mantra that you'll hear that they actually teach in school. I think it's far too oversimplifying, but it does get people to think and realize, like, yeah, the president is most effective during their first 100 days. That's when they have momentum behind them, and when the political ladders and alliances and whatnot are reforming themselves in what's it called in DC. Anyway, the guiding star. So, like, yeah, we want the president to be a guiding star. In all honesty, it's why one of my most important criteria for who I elect as president is them being a respectable person. It's worth noting, though, that the guiding star thing is a cultural thing. It's not actually a government thing. Even that, like, the culture influences the government. But what we want is a guiding star that's cultural, and we like to keep things simple, right? So we want just one guiding star, if you will, one guiding star above all the other guiding stars, and we'll follow that one to death. That's as simple and as easy as us human beings and us people would actually like. But in reality, you actually have different guiding stars for all sorts of different things. You've got guiding stars for, say a role model growing up on how to be a parent. Or you've got guiding stars or a role model for how to sleep with women, like whatever, it is. We've actually got different, stars for all sorts of different things. But again, we really want that one above all others. And for a lot of people, and for a great amount of the American history, that was God. It's an uncomfortable topic for a lot of people. But it was God. And you asked, like, how we could go back to a guiding star, and there's no or a positive guiding star, and there's no easy answer, because we're not I want to say that we're not a Christian nation anymore, right? So you can't just say, like, oh, well, God could be the guiding star, because that's not going to accurately culturally represent all the people that don't believe in God, or believe in a different God, or believe in a different concept of God or gods, or I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole. It's not a binary choice. So, like, I'm half talking. Yeah, I'm half talking, half thinking out loud here at the moment. Like, we don't have an easy replacement, if you will. The easiest replacement would be another, quite frankly, authoritarian leader, but just a good authoritarian leader. And humanity doesn't really find those very often. Those are definitely the exception rather than the norm. And then, ironically, the authoritarian leader needs to become not authoritarian. They basically, like, historically speaking, how these have gone out is that they've ridden to power in such a manner, and then they further vest that power in the people as their tenure has continued. And, then they're remembered as blah, 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 the great, So yeah,
what Pierce is, for those of you who believe in like Christ and stuff, like what Pierce is trying to say is we need like an Old Testament God to come in here and like smack everything up, and get the power, and then when he's in office, become Jesus.
So yeah, some biblical smiting would certainly help, along with having Jesus in charge. What would Jesus do? Quite frankly, I think Jesus would do a lot of good things if he were in the Oval Office, man. But
Dude, I'm telling you, if Jesus like ever went to college these days and joined a frat, he would be the ultimate pickup machine. I mean,
Oh,
can you
yeah.
imagine a line better with a girl than, hey, you want to come back to my place and make a son of God with me? I mean, come on. That's just like butter right there.
Jesus was a
Jesus
very
would be a
hearted
great
homeboy.
player these days.
Like
Jesus would have a harem.
Well, probably not, but he'd be very popular for sure. He'd have a harem following him. We know that because it happened. But
supposedly, who knows?
I think that
he had tons of followers, man.
I mean, our entire religion could be like the entire concept of religion could be built on like whoever that time Stephen King was, for all we know. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it could just be some like weirdo like me that just made everything up. Could you imagine that?
Sure.
I think like obviously the cartoonish extreme version of like a society that does away with God either just kind of over time or extremely, and then replaces it with an authoritarian leader is the Soviet Union, literally. But which we don't want. And so, but at the same time, I think people who are maybe religious or a bit more fundamental and realize that, they're the ones that want God to become integrated further, back into society. Like, look, we had that guiding star. We lost it for X, Y, and Z. Therefore, we need to get it back. But you're not gonna get people who just don't believe in it to just go to that. But I mean, like, that's just not gonna work. So then, yeah, we are at this point where there needs to be something. Like, if you get rid of the kind of whole higher power God, like, guiding star purpose that gives people, and then leave them with the state of the world now, or the state of our country, or the state of our government, or whatever, then I feel like cynicism and just kind of nihilism is just the default. And I don't really, I don't know what to do about it. Like, I guess ideally you'd get all the things that Christianity used to ideally kind of form together, which is a community and a sense of connection with each other, and XYZ, but do that without God being there, which essentially means you
would have to replace God then.
It doesn't have to be because replacing God is, again, literally authoritarian type stuff. Like, so we need to.
So there are studies that show that if you go to church regularly, you will live longer. Do you know why? Can you think why that is? I'll give you a hint. It's not because God said that you're going to live longer.
Is it all the workouts that I get, all the cardio I get from scrubbing, Trump 2020 and, Trump hates the Jews off the side of my synagogue?
No, definitely not that either. It's because you have a stronger sense of belonging to your community, and because that community is much more likely to in turn support you. So, like, religion and God is a very difficult topic in today's society, especially in much more liberal audiences like this show tends to lean, right? But the removal of God and religion from our culture, if you will, has been extraordinarily damaging to us. And I this isn't me trying to say like, oh, everybody should be Christian or Jewish or Muslim or any of that, but these religions facilitate a level of community that is very, very difficult to replace elsewhere. You know, like when you go every week and you see people that aren't your coworkers, but you see people that have some sort of commonality with you, you know, you're able to form those bonds with them. And then from there, you're more likely to find a shoulder to cry on, or someone to give you a perspective, a bit of advice, or maybe just a helping hand when you're down on your luck, right? Like the state of Utah, for example, is very heavily Mormon, right? And Utah has a fairly low rate of people on welfare compared to the other nations. It's very, very, very low in this regard. And it's no wonder why, when so many of these people are part of the Mormon church community, and they'll help you quite literally. Like, and it's not like the church helping you either. It's just like the bishop of the church knows that you lost your job. So then he tells one of his like other congregation members, hey, blah, blah, blah's looking for a job. Give him an interview. You know, maybe he'll fit your need. Or, hey, let's all do a food drive to help, you know, this single mother after the husband passed away, or you name it, right? Like, communities are supposed to help each other. That's why we have a civilization. We're supposed to help each other. So that's what we do, right? And nowadays we've just gotten so big that it's no longer the village raising a child. You know, and nowadays we've decided, all right, instead of us helping you, now we'll have the government help you, because that's still us, just in an indirect way. Yes, right, maybe, sort of. And it then it becomes abstracted, right? And then instead of seeing the sacrifice of your neighbors to help you, then instead of seeing them face to face and being able to tell them thank you and being able to repay them directly in a later point, you know, and be able to get your own feel goods of having like helped them after they helped you. Like, I don't know if any of you have been in a situation like that where you helped someone and then they helped you, or where they helped you and then you helped them back later in the road, but it's extraordinarily rewarding. It's like, seriously, you're going to feel great after it, right? And when we create government programs that do that instead of us, the idea is that, all right, less people are falling through the cracks. This is a good thing, right? Because charity, quite frankly, does not take care of everyone. But on the downside, we lose a huge amount of sense of community. So churches still have that community, right? They still do have that. And we as a society are, quite frankly, weaker for losing it. For those of us that have chosen to lose it, or were not, you know, born into that way of life. And I mean, I'm just speaking strategically here. You know, we are weaker for it. So what's the fix? That's a much bigger issue if you don't want to have God in the conversation.
Well, I think it's like something that we can like look to Marianne Williamson for. God, I can't believe I'm saying this. Look to Marianne Williamson for, because she built that entire community, you know, in Iowa, where they make sure that they come together as a community every day together to meditate, to meet, to talk, to, you know, just make sure everyone's okay, you know, and they do that every day religiously. They just have that meeting. I mean, and it's like nothing really religious about it. It's just a community gathering where everyone just comes together, you know,
it's very religious.
Of like everyone's there and catching each other.
Yeah, I would say it's very religious. It's just a different faith. But I would say that community, what is it, Howard? I think it's the town of Howard, if I remember correctly.
I forget. I know it's in Iowa, and I think she tried to start one in Oregon at one point too.
I could be wrong. I think it's Howard, or maybe it's in Howard County, one of the two, out in Iowa. But yeah, like there's a lot of happy people that live there, man. You know, and most of us would deride them as being like, oh, you've got your healing crystals and you think all these weird different things than I think. And like scientifically speaking, they have no more power than a placebo, right? But a placebo is a real thing, turns out. So it's like, oh, hey, I think this makes me feel better. It makes me feel better. Who would have thought? And there's a lot of happy people there. So like we might deride them, but like they're not regretting their lifestyle, you know? Yeah, exactly. You know, Buddhism, sure. Like it's the sense of community, you know, it's a huge part of our culture. And a lot of us have been forgoing it, especially as you get younger. You know.
Yeah, I think a sense of community is like really important, and I think you guys like hit it on the head with like, Jason was talking a little bit about like we need someone heavy-handed to come in and like bring in new commandments and stuff like that, and I kind of think of the Bill of Rights as like the US's commandments. Like it's like what we value in humans, right, and what we value in other human beings, and I think it's. But maybe it's a matter of evolving that into something that we see as like our moral stance in the world. Like how do we define humanity, and maybe we live by that. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there, but maybe that's how we like make it about America instead of
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to ballpark because you're right. Like there's like major parts of religion that are so positive, like the community building, the morals, the like the commandments, of course, are so important, and you get those parallels in all different types of religion. Like you definitely get that sense of morality, that sense of community building, and being a part of something. So yeah,
America is a place where people came for religious freedom. And and they have this, and we developed this fantastic stance
the New England
church and state.
Yeah,
but
it's worth
at
noting
the same time, the way it was modeled, like you said, is very much on a religious basis with our commandments, our Bill of Rights.
Yeah,
there are 10 of each. I mean,
the New England colonies were basically founded by people looking for religious freedom, right? Like that was the predominant culture. It's worth noting though that I'm saying the New England. I'm not referring to the Southern colonies. The Southern colonies, on the other hand, were economic.
Yeah.
Totally from the very beginning, economic.
100%, yeah.
What?
I said, 100%, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of ironic, actually, because if anything, the cultures of the two have flipped over.
Right. But that happened during the Civil War because the North came in and said, hey, you shouldn't have these people as slaves, and they basically wiped out an entire culture and brought their religion with them with the carpet bagging and everything. And those are the people who took over the South now. And everyone from the South that needed a job after their plantations were closed down, their family farms were taken away, and all of this other stuff moved north to where the factories are. So you have the more business-minded, and, it was just like a migration of each way. I mean, you had the Canadian geese going south, and you had like the mallard ducks going north.
I don't think I'd thought of it that way before.
Yeah.
I'm curious like what numbers are behind that. Yeah, I don't know. Devin, you wanted to say something.
Oh yeah, there's a few things ago. I guess the most recent thing I was going to mention is it's not something I can speak to specifically, but a lot of people in my family, like my dad, my sister, have been to rehab, sometimes like more than once, and AA like has their 12 steps, which essentially is commandments. Their commandments in a way. Like my dad's talked about, he's been sober for like 4.5 years now, and he essentially has talked about how it's essentially like a religious community. Like the steps are functionally religious, just but not in name, right? Like the practicality of it is that like they recite them. It's like a whole thing. They meet every week, everything. And since then,
you meet every day. It's just whether you choose to go every day or not.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And multiple times a day.
And so since he went to rehab and got sober, he doesn't go to meetings a lot because he is just somewhat like he hasn't found the need for it. But when he did, and he's served more so as like, I forget the term, but I guess like a mentor for people like in the very early stages, and has like been that support person to get multiple other people sober and everything. And he knows people who do go constantly for that reason, because they need something, so I think sometimes he phrases it as like they're addicts, and so instead of drugs now, they're kind of just, addicted to going to the meetings and stuff. However you want to phrase it. But something else that he also mentioned is that there are people in there who will talk about how, they found God, like they're explicitly Christian in their terminology. He said he knows a guy who there's just a boulder like on a beach, I forget where it is, that this guy will just make trips out to, and it's essentially like that person's God, right? And so maybe this isn't it's a really interesting community, I guess, because they don't have their collective thing, like they all come together, but in terms of the God replacement, is very individualized from everything my dad has talked about.
It's interesting how your dad phrased it. They're replacing one addiction for another, because when I was getting my psychology degree, one of the papers I wrote was actually on rehab and everything. And the endorphin rush that you get from sharing your stories in front of strangers and everything, basically being an exhibitionist and standing up in front of everyone, it triggers the same part of the brain that releases the dopamine like when you're shooting up heroin or popping pills or whatever. It's giving you that same dopamine rush that you're getting. So you're not really replacing what gives you that dopamine rush with something else that gives you that dopamine rush. If that makes sense at all. I mean, so it's essentially like, it's very interesting that your dad would say that because of how it works. Because, that's the same reason some people love to go out in fucking public. It's because that dopamine rush that they get from being an exhibitionist and sharing your life problems, is kind of like you're sharing your deepest, darkest secrets. I mean, that's a scary freaking thing. I mean, that's a lot of dopamine rush right there, sharing everything that you've done wrong in life. That's a huge dopamine rush. I mean, so yeah, it's literally you're trading off, where you're getting that rush from. And that's why some people go to 3 meetings a day for the longest, and it takes forever to wean them off. And it takes a really good sponsor to recognize that they're facing a rush, and that, to get them away from that and break it down and take them away from that and replace it with something like smoking or eating pie or Skittles or,
Hopefully something constructive, but
yeah,
it's just so hard to find something that's like unifying though, right? And I think that's what we're.
Well, that's because we're a nation made up of like so many different cultures and so many different people, nothing is ever going to truly 100% unify us, so.
And even, you're talking about Marianne Williamson and those communities, and like there's those communities explicitly which, fill that gap we're talking about, but just like the general turn to spirituality, right? Like that kind of broad term. Like I could say that my sister who went to rehab is super spiritual person, and she was never really religious before. But spirituality also isn't inherently, it's like way more individual.
Yeah.
Any church experiences. And so that kind of thing will maybe solve the personal and internal like stresses, right? Like, so there's not only the community that religion brings, but it's also just like being incredibly stressed about the world, right? Like, speaking as someone
I don't hear that a lot.
yeah. This is a whole separate topic. We've been going for a while now, but I'll just mention this briefly. But like, I don't know about you all. I guess, yeah, but I am someone who I don't believe in God, and so like I don't have that, and also therefore never grew up in like a church setting or anything like that, and so I guess I didn't. Also, not only did I not explicitly have that community dynamic, but I also didn't have that thing that kept me from being scared and kind of dreadful, especially like when I was a teenager who was like very more like anti-religion, right? Like very cynical atheist type. Of like, again, especially with the state of the world, right? We talk about this whole state of the world, and then in my brain, there isn't anything else, right? Like this is all that anyone's ever going to experience in my head, and so that makes every bad thing about our current situation, just in the U.S. and globally, that much worse in my head. And so that, again, brings like a lot of internal stresses. And so that's something that spirituality and different approaches to like reaching like a contentness to that. Oh, wait, I want to rewrite this in here. Yeah. Definitely. And there's a whole thing that I went through to get to the point where I'm not like not only a super cynical atheist, but also not like a like cripplingly, anxious about the world and like my mortality, right? Like I have had this whole like, thought process I went through, but anyway, that's a separate discussion. So yeah, I guess like the whole point I'm bringing up is just that this whole spirituality move that has really the only replacement that we're seeing in terms of that. Yeah, it still doesn't really solve community problem. And so, yeah, I don't know what to do. Whatever. To his point, right? Like the Yang Gang thing was definitely a point where, I came to this conclusion about this mentality of like, okay, if this is all there is in the universe, right? Like I'm never going to experience anything else, and no one else in my head, no one else is going to experience anything else either. Then, like, the only thing that you can do is make the world better at like right now as it is. Like that's literally the only. It's the most important thing there could possibly be, and so, also in my experience, the reason I went to Iowa for Yang and like was so pulled in that direction was because the approach and like again like I've won, that we're with in Iowa and everything, like sharing that kind of like really active drive to make the world a better place, and that was definitely like community forming for me. I'm rambling.
One parallel I can like draw from Iowa to like religion in general is we were essentially like Jehovah's Witnesses. Like I never realized like how shitty they have it until you've had the door in your face like 700 times in one day.
Well, when you and Pierce were describing your experience, it sounded a lot like what I imagined Jehovah's Witnesses like experience, because you're literally walking into a household and they don't want to hear anything you have to say, and you have to convince them that it's like okay. And yeah, but I mean, Devin, like everything that you've been saying resonates with me too. I was raised in like a Hindu household, but I'm not really religious or anything. I don't really. I mean, I'm more agnostic than atheist, but I've definitely been like at some point I was atheist. I just didn't really believe, and now it's more just I don't really care, but I think that there's some more like spiritual connection happening between people, which is what I've more found lately. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. By the way, I know you were trying to say something.
You know what, Sue? Andrew Yang, I suppose, was the guiding star of the Yang Gang community. But Andrew Yang didn't create the community. We did. You did. I did. It was all of us. And I think he would probably be the first person to tell you that. It takes all of us. And I agree. It's certainly a cool club to be part of. It's a club where anybody can be a member, even Marcho Graps, if you get that reference.
I got it.
But yeah,
I'm old as fuck though.
yeah. We did it together. That's right, Mayank. Anyway, this has been like a great talk. Honestly, we've gone a bit longer than we usually do. So I don't know about you guys, but I think I'm all right with with ending it on the kind of that fuzzy warm feeling of.
I just wanted to say thank you guys for having me. Like, I love what you guys are doing, and I know this was super last minute, but I really appreciate you guys like reaching out and having me. Yeah, I think keep it up. What you're doing is fucking awesome, and I hope we collaborate
awesome.
in the future.
Yeah,
No, you're awesome.
You know what you're doing.
No, seriously, like I think this is exactly the type of stuff that we all need to be doing. And
Oh my goodness! All right, yeah. So all right, you know what? If you guys are willing to hang around a bit longer, Sue has reminded us of a question that we glossed over earlier because we were in the middle of a different topic. But that was actually, let me scroll up and not put words in her mouth. But basically, can you provide with your opinions on Trump and Biden what each did well and bad? So, Mayank, would you be doing us the honor of going first?
Okay, so for Trump, and I talked to a lot of people that previously voted for Trump, and I just wanted to get their idea of what they thought of Trump, because what I thought of Trump personally was that the worst parts of Trump came out on stage. Like he didn't talk about policy barely at all. He was constantly interrupting and just making personal attacks, which it was just really hard to get anything out of that. And I feel like most of what Biden could do, like Biden had three options. He could either fight and like sink down to that level, or to that level, whatever that is. He could do what he did, which was, treat it like just outbursts and not really treat it with any real semblance. Or I guess he could have went completely on the offensive and started making personal attacks as well. Like, part of what I liked was that Biden didn't really give in to the personal attacks. He tried not to focus on them. But honestly, from my perspective, it was a weird debate. Like, I feel like real topics weren't really debated. And a lot of people reached out to me afterwards and told me that they were worried about where our nation was headed because of the debate that they watched that night. Not in like I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom, but just like from the perspective of watching like previous debates, I didn't feel like there was very much substance to it. And just back to what Pierce was saying before, like the main takeaways that I had from Trump's side was that he's not willing to accept the election results. He is, whether or not he knows who the Proud Boys are, he's not willing to denounce them, which is weird. And the stand by quote was really strange. And then from Biden's perspective, it was mainly just fact checking. Like, a lot of it was just like throwing claims of abolishing suburbs and things like that, like things that we've heard, repeatedly on like Tucker Carlson and stuff. Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Oh, I said puppy.
Oh yeah, she's just. Oh, okay. Yeah, she's just chilling now. Sorry, I didn't realize she got up. But yeah, like it was just honestly really hard for me to watch. I didn't get a lot of substance out of it. I've just been trying to read through their policy online. And I feel like most of us, we read a lot, so the debates themselves weren't particularly that useful. Sorry, that's just my opinion. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
One quick thing I want to mention what you said in the beginning there is that you said like Trump's worst side came out, right? Like Trump is like abrasive and aggressive in nature. But he was like more aggressive in this debate than he was, it feels like, even then with Hillary. And
right.
He could have justified, he could have been like he was last night with Hillary, and it just because it was against her, it would have worked better because people hated her so much. But people don't hate Biden in the same way. He's not pinning he could be pinning the same stuff he pinned against Hillary to Biden, right? Like they have similar records, similar opinions on things, but he's not even going in that same direction. He was just again like driving the same like Tucker Carlson-y stuff that people especially when Biden's standing right there, like I don't, who knows, but like I don't think people really buy it as much, right? Like he's like, oh, you won't say law. Like one thing Trump did is you won't say law and order, you won't say it, and then that's a bad claim to make against Biden, who will say it, and then just did in the very next statement he made. He talked about it. He talked about police, not all that stuff, and so
I don't remember him using the words law and order.
Huh?
He used it twice. He said, "I am for law and order, as long as it is in a manner that respects all people equally." And then he
actually went into some kind of detail, policy-wise, of like of
that's right. I forgot
what that means when he was asked about community policing and all that stuff, and so none of the redeeming aspects of Trump, right? Like some people will say that he doesn't have any, but obviously he had some redeeming qualities to people in 2016. It's not like I voted for him in 2016, but even I could see that he had more of that. Like he was like wittier and with his in 2016, in the Republican primaries against Hillary, like he didn't really have those things against Biden. He just went on some tangents about making fun of, like saying don't use the word smart with me because you graduated at the bottom of your class when you're in college and you're a 70, whatever-year-old man. And so, right, I think to sum it up, right, I forget what panel it was. Who's that guy that does the undecided voters panel at the end of it, at the end of all the debates? You know what I'm talking about?
I forget.
I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry.
I feel like you guys would recognize the name, but he always does these ahead of all these debates, whether it's Democratic debates or the general election debates, of undecided voters, and then afterwards they talk about it. And like a majority of the voters in this panel, this is on like CNN, or it's like on like TV. More people just said after that debate that they're just not going to vote than went for Trump or Biden together. Like it was a majority of people were like, forget it.
No.
Like this was so like what you said in the beginning about how like people are concerned about the state of the country, especially people who maybe aren't as tuned in, right? Like this is the first they watch and they're like, hold on, this is like I know that Trump's been Trump, but like this is it, huh?
Well, I think
never has our country
a lot to go after Joe Biden because he knew that he wasn't going to be as easy to break as Hillary. I think that's why he was a lot more abrasive than normal as far as that, because he got Hillary to break. He got Hillary to call people in Iowa and the flyover states deplorables. He got her to say stuff like that. Mm-hmm. He didn't get Biden to say that, and so I think that's why he dialed up that aggression and why he was going so just ham, so to say, or so to speak, on like Biden and just interrupting at every cost because he wanted Biden to break and he couldn't find Biden's breaking point, which it speaks a lot to Joe Biden. Like the amount of calm versus the amount of shit that he had to eat from that man last night was just impressive. And that's ultimately what I think Joe Biden did the best. But for me personally, what Joe Biden did the best was he acknowledged Charlottesville has an anti-Semitic protest. Like he acknowledged it as an anti-Semitic rally against the Jews. And I know coming from the Jewish community here in Oklahoma, where I'm currently at, working and everything with Max on, getting people registered to vote and just trying to get people out to the poll, a lot of Jews don't know where they're going. They're from Oklahoma. They lived here their entire life. They know it's a Republican state, and they've been Republican for like ever, but they don't know where they're going because, Trump has done nothing but this. And we allowed figureheads like Sean King and Al Sharpton to come into Charlottesville and like sweep the anti-Semitic stuff under the rug and hijack it for their own agenda of Black Lives Matter. And I'm not saying that those things, Black Lives don't matter or anything like that. You know where I stand on that. Black Lives Matter, definitely matter. I would have liked Charlottesville to have been a rallying point for all, races to come together that are treated like less and stand together, united as one, against the hate being spewed by the Proud Boys that day. That's what I would have liked to see personally, versus us just getting swept under the rug because, we pass as white, we'll be okay, as their agenda goes. That's what, for me personally, Joe Biden did best. What he did worse is right at the end when Trump started attacking his son Hunter, and he came, and he stood up for his son and everything, and he said, yes, he had a problem with addiction. He almost broke. And that showed a lot of weakness. It showed where his weak point was. And has a president, someone whose weak point is the family, especially when their family tends to work abroad a lot and there are higher security risks for the Secret Service and stuff, and could possibly be taken hostage, going abroad for their job. Having him in office at the same time as that happening is that's his weakest thing.
I'm not sure, to be honest, if that's what people are going to gather from the way he talked about Hunter, though. Specifically the part where he talked about, defended, because they kept just going back and forth about, why did he get the money from Russia? That's not true. Why did he get the money from, so that wasn't substantive.
No, you got to remember the addiction part was almost part. That's what I'm trying to, make.
I feel like that was good for Biden, and maybe that's just maybe that was just me. It felt like
it could be my logical way of looking at things, because I know Hunter Biden goes to foreign countries, and I know he works with foreign governments and everything, and trade policies and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. I'm not.
He's a very accessible target to people who may not like us.
Yeah,
who may want to put us in a compromising position one day.
What I mean is
what he does for work.
People aren't gathering that.
That's where I went logically, because it shows that Joe Biden might not be able to put that aside and be president through a situation like that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any.
That's what I meant by that. And to go to Sue's question, what did Trump do well? He finally brushed down that little piece of hair that covers the Velcro on his hairpiece. And he did that well, I guess. And then, what did he do the worst? He wore the worst fitting freaking pants on the face of the planet. Did you see the size of that guy's ass? Holy hell. And then everything else in between those two things. But, just I couldn't get over it. He looked like the Hamburglar from the McDonald's commercial, just that obscene, just round section in the center.
Real quick, Pierce, I know you wanted, you were gonna say something, but to say what Trump did well, relative to him and his goals, is the election undermining stuff and waffling about that and basically shoring up his people and drumming up the Democrats are gonna steal it thing. That's the only thing that actually went to his benefit, because he was he's already behind. He was behind. I feel like people were on the fence for okay, forget it. This is crazy, because he was, speaking of drumming up people who support him, talking about Proud Boys and stuff
he literally told them to stand up. He made a call to arms to people who wanted. His primary agenda is to wipe out the Jewish culture and then start with everyone else.
Yeah.
But we're the number one on their hit list. If you listen to their leader talk, he's been on Joe Rogan multiple times. I forget his name. Joe Rogan loves him because he's a fun guy. Who he doesn't think anyone could take seriously. He's just, messing around. But this is a guy who says he would literally, dreams about shooting, Jews with his guns.
You got a citation for that?
What was
that on the Joe Rogan podcast, or?
Yeah, he's literally had it. Joe Rogan's had him on the podcast.
No. When he said that he dreams about shooting Jews. So you're making a claim right now, and I'm just asking you to source that claim. Because I know nothing about the
It's
dude.
been on the Joe Rogan. I can send you. Hold on, I tweeted a cut together video of it like earlier today.
This is like explicitly related.
I'll tweet it over to you after this. But on the Joe Rogan podcast, he's made that claim. On his own podcast, he's made that claim. On his own Twitter, he's made that claim.
Before I was on here, I was like reading, because the mainstream media can talk about like, oh, Trump with the whole standby thing that's drumming up white nationalists, that's like a call to arms. And when it's just the media talking about that, you're like, okay, how much is that really the case? Like, it's hard to say, but what I was doing before I came on here was reading like pages and pages and pages of people in forums who are those people, like literally white nationalists in the forum, on forum posts, like reacting to that. And who knows how many of them there really are, but some of them really do explicitly are like, we got to get ready. Let's get the guns. Like they were making jokes about how like they were going to upcharge the others for ammo because like it's, ammo's going to run out soon. Like you guys better get a lot. And like, classic like 8chan stuff. Like if you have ever like read any of that stuff.
4chan, 8chan.
Yeah.
2chan was a thing at one point, I think.
And this goes back to what we were saying at the very beginning of like, people are definitely going to die in like around. And so, but I guess if that all benefits Trump to some degree, then
well, liberals to vote against him is his thought process.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Chris?
Never has our country needed more and our parties offered less.
Right.
That's so true.
So I'm going to give you guys the bad news. I think Trump won that debate by virtually every metric possible. All right. Particularly in the metrics that matter, as in think about accomplished objectives. So Devin hinted at this, that Trump managed to motivate his base to be with him if he chooses to contest the election. Check. Objective accomplished. All right. Trump managed to throw doubt into the election process. Check. Objective accomplished. Trump managed to portray himself as a stronger man than Biden, and he quite literally just did that by being, a loud, obnoxious person. And like he was stronger than the debate moderator. He was the strong man, and in these questioning times, we need a strong leader. Check. He managed to bring Biden down. You guys say like, oh, Biden did a good job of not biting and not giving in, and I disagree. I completely disagree with that. I think he brought Biden down exactly to his level. And even if Trump was being more egregious, that Biden was in the mud just like Trump. And the thing about the pig is that the pig likes being in the mud, right? Don't argue with, there's a saying, don't argue with an idiot because they'll bring you down to their level and beat you with experience. I hate to admit this, but Trump is not an idiot. But he definitely brought Biden down to his level, and he beat him with experience. And it was not pretty. And as far as like all Trump needs is his motivated base to show up. And right now they're quite motivated. So the next best thing is to demotivate Biden's base to not show up. And what was Devin saying? Oh, that the American voters, that a lot of them just decided, you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to vote. Check. Objective accomplished. Of any objective that possibly mattered that Biden was trying to accomplish, such as persuading new voters, particularly swing voters, or energizing his own base to come out for him and actually vote, I don't think he accomplished those things. There were a couple of moments where Biden spoke very well. In fact, there was one spot that I thought, this is the best speech I've ever heard Biden give. And I can't even on the top of my head tell you what that speech was, which is problematic because, it's supposed to motivate me to come out, and that didn't happen. Now, I think most people, unfortunately, just aren't voting for Biden. They're voting against Trump. and they're voting for, I guess, a sense of normalcy. Biden represents a sense of normalcy. But make no mistake, on that debate stage, the two are very close in age, but one of them seemed a whole lot younger. Seemed like he had a whole lot mental alacrity with him. And that wasn't Biden. It was Trump. Trump seemed like he is the one more energetic, more strong, more capable. Even if half of the shit that he said was straight up wrong, it's about the appearance of the matter. And the appearance is that he dominated. He quite literally dominated with all of his words. Mayank mentioned that there were 3 options, that he's able to dish it back, or that he's able to ignore it, or that he was able to some middle of the road option between the 3. I felt like that was what the 3 options he gave were. And all 3 of those are shit. All 3, and Trump knows this going in, right? All 3 of those are definitely shit. It requires a specific personality that is balancing between those 3 options and hitting the right notes at the right times. So it's not roll over, dead, ignore it the entire time. No, that's a loss. It's not, go back down, sling right with him at the same time. No, again, he's louder than you. He's just going to say more preposterous things than you. That's going to be a loss as well. And it's not an attempt to balance the 2 either, because then you just look like you don't have the best sense of direction, that you're responding to him. Again, that's not it. It's to the right answer. And the right answer is something that just Biden does not have enough experience to have done. I say ironically, considering how old he is, that he doesn't have the experience. But that man is not used to being disrespected in his life. You needed someone that is, quite frankly, younger, or has a younger mind, that is used to being disrespected more, and is able to stay cool and know exactly where to get in a quick little jab right where it's supposed to be, and then make the rest of the attacks just bounce off you. And there's different ways to make them bounce off you. From ignoring them to basically mocking them, and there's different ways to mock them. Like there's different ways to mock, to make the attacks bounce off you. All the same. One thing that comes to mind, and I'm not saying that Biden should have done this, I'm just illustrating my point. One of the first things that comes to my mind is just, yeah, sure, man. like just act completely disinterested in him, right? And Biden actually tried to do that when he tried to kind of ignore Trump and talk directly to the American populace, and I thought it was probably a better play than most of the other things that he could have done. But this still doesn't change my assessment that Trump won. Trump won that debate. In fact, if I were to have any thought that Trump might win the presidency, it was after that debate, because Trump absolutely accomplished objectives and crushed Biden in that debate, much more so than it might have appeared when they were both slinging and rolling around in the mud.
Well, we never got to say who we thought won. We were just given, the best and the worst of each.
Oh yeah. So what did they?
I thought like the biggest loser of that was the American population.
No, nobody won I mean, like I just said, as far as accomplishing objectives, Trump beat his opponent Biden, but nobody won that debate. The American people lost.
Yeah. We lost so much.
Yeah, we did.
I think
I'm pretty sure brain cells died in my head that day or that night.
Same.
He definitely shored up his base.
I started drinking. I'm not gonna lie. I started drinking.
I'm not medically cleared to drink, so.
He definitely shored up his base, but I feel like that's just they're already shored up. I don't know how what more Trump can say in this debate compared to what he's been saying that will get them hyped up, right? Like they are already. It's just.
They're amazingly hyped up. Pageant had on a Trump supporter earlier in the day, right before we went on, and I was watching that podcast. And the supporter that she had on was just, oh my God, it's like he snorted 3 lines of Coke mixed with gunpowder, and was just like, he had his Trumpy bear sitting on his lap, and he was just going at it.
You see this with, back when I was in Arizona, I saw this, right? And people talk about how Arizona can go to Biden, right? Like Biden's been up in Arizona, but you'd be hard pressed to find anything Biden, like sign whatever. And at least for my family,
people are afraid.
What was it?
It's because people are afraid. We're running into that with the Democratic Party here in Oklahoma. People don't want to sign. Like they're like, yeah, they come into the office like we want to donate to local causes. We want to donate to the local party. Here's some money. Anything to get these crazy people out of office. Whatever. I used to be a Republican. I've been a Republican since like 1958. In this state, I've lived here, my entire life. Here's money. Take it. Just get these people out of office. They're such a disgrace. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, do you want a yard sign? Do you want this? Do you want that? No. If people see me with that, I might get hurt. Mm-hmm. It's a legitimate fear that they might get hurt here in Oklahoma. That's why they don't want anything Biden. That's why it's hard pressed to see a Biden yard sign. Mm-hmm. Or, even for Kendra Horn.
It's probably not a legitimate fear, but it's a real fear. Note the difference between the two.
Yeah.
People attacking other people for their for their political beliefs physically happens way less than you would think just from browsing on social media, because those incidents totally incense us. But this is not a common thing at all. It's incredibly statistically anomalous. But perception is reality, so it's a real fear. It's not a legitimate fear, but it's a real fear.
Well, I mean, you constantly see it on Facebook and Twitter and all those other things when you click that MAGA hashtag for whatever stupid reason that you feel might, be a sense of positivity that day. You click it and you're like, oh my God, these people are making threats that if they see a Joe Biden bumper sticker, they're going to destroy the car with a baseball bat in the parking lot, or they're going to, or my friend just put up a Biden sign. I can't wait to go,
In a country of 330 million people, you're going to find people that say that shit.
Yeah.
And you're going to find even less, but some that still do act on it. Most people just talk shit. But, some people will even act on it.
Some people believe
330 million people. You're going to find those people. I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm just saying that the statistical likelihood of you encountering them because you decided to put a yard sign on your front yard is rather small.
Well, I know it's the amount of people that vandalize churches and synagogues are super low, but yet every other day someone does it. It's one of the, it's a real fear that people are having, because they see it happen.
Again, 330 million people.
It's super they're like, oh my God, it's so super easy for them to do it to, a church that's sitting in the middle of town, and why wouldn't it be way easier on them to do it to my front yard? That's the rationality of it.
But I'm not denying the way it makes you feel. It certainly makes you feel that way. The thought has certainly entered your head. It has influenced your decision making. These are all real things. I'm just saying that I wouldn't say it's a legitimate concern. But that's not how we feel today.
A legitimate concern. I get it. The likelihood of it happening is super low, but it's a legitimate fear that people have because we especially during COVID, we live mostly on social media, sadly.
Yep. Yeah, and that makes these things seem way more frequent than they actually are.
Yeah.
For any event.
It's that microcosm situation that you're talking about again, that we were talking about so many times. It's
I think
if you've watched more than 2 episodes of this podcast and you don't know what a microcosm is yet, we have not done our job, because I swear we've mentioned it on every single episode.
Last thing I was going to say real quick is just that I feel that, Trump's base has already been energized. So I don't feel like they're energized more from that. I think he just did more of the election, kind of muddying of waters, which is helpful for him. But in terms of actually drawing people out, I think he's capped with his people. And I think the way he was so, again, the bad aspects of Trump came out combined with, right? All the headlines are all about the standby comment, plus the fact that he was just yelling over him. He's the current, he is the president of the United States. He's not a candidate anymore. I feel for every, I mentioned that panel of people who aren't going to just not going to vote. But there's definitely people who, like, I can't say whether, I feel like Biden didn't shore up his people, but I feel like you said, he's running against Trump. And I feel like the way that Trump was yesterday shored up Biden's people.
That's a perfect point.
Yeah, it shored up Biden.
A lot of Biden's work for him. At the same time, though, what Pierce was saying is like 100% like dead on. He now has the way he presented the election in front of the American public means that his base will not accept anything but a Trump win. You will have people screaming that Biden for the entirety of Biden's tenure. Well, not tenure, but like reign or term, because Biden's already said he's only serving one term. He said that like back in June of last year when he took the debate stage for the first time.
Yeah,
it's going to be nothing but people screaming that he is an illegitimate president, assuming that Biden wins it, because I still think that this thing is 50-50 and it's going to rely on Texas flipping blue. That's my call for it. If Texas doesn't flip blue for Biden,
I don't know.
It's 50-50 and it's going to require that for Joe Biden to get that one vote over. It's going to be close. That's my personal opinion, just breaking down everything and breaking down the polling data and like looking at everything.
Then go to Texas. Wait.
I'm basically already there. I'm like in this bastardized little like,
Yeah. Oklahoma, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Yeah, I think we can.
I was gonna wrap this up. I was gonna say thank you, Miank, for being here. Thank you, Sue and Miank and El Susan. I don't actually know how to pronounce your name. I see you there in the chat. Thank you for everybody for being here and watching. This has been our first episode to pass 2 hours. Probably our first episode to pass an hour and a half. So it's definitely been a lot that we've covered.
Hey, we have a new goal to beat.
What's that?
We have a new goal to beat.
Yeah, hey, sure. New record achieved. Achievement unlocked. Anyway.
We're almost to the kill screen.
Yep. Thank you, Sue. You're awesome as well. So everyone watching this, hopefully you grew a bit with us. We enjoyed our tacos, those of us that had them. And hopefully we will see you again next week. Stay forward is the best thing I got.
Finally, we're going to let you go pee.
Yep.